So I held off just a little bit to bring this particular show to you today because I wanted to get the Fed statement. The Fed has decided to do nothing, to pause again, which is what 95% of the economists thought they would do, including this one. I'm not an economist. I can't make any claim to be an economist. Anyway, then all attention will now be on what will the Fed do in the December meeting, which is about 6 weeks from now. I'm saying that they will continue to pause. That's my estimate right now. So if anybody wants to take my vote, there you go. There were very few changes in the note that comes afterwards, but let's just take a look at what they were. First of all, so the beginning of the note says, recent indicators suggest that economic activity as opposed to as expanding or has been expanding at a solid pace, it is now economic activity expanded strong in the third quarter. With regard to job gains, they had said, they now say they are moderating since earlier in the year but remain strong. And then in the second paragraph, the U.S. banking system is sound and resilient. Tighter financial and credit conditions. Before they were just saying tighter credit conditions. Now they're saying financial and credit conditions. All right, that was all that was changed. The markets basically took a minor dip after the note came out. I'm guessing that was more of a sell on the good news that there was a pause. But we could take another look if you like before we close out today's session. Tesla has been in the green most of the day, up and down, right around break even all day long. Last time I looked, it was in the green. All right, what are we going to talk about today? Well, I've been thinking about this one for days. So here we go. By population, this region would be 38th in the world, smaller than Canada, much smaller than South Korea, Italy, Spain, Argentina, France, or the United Kingdom. And yet with a population of just under 40 million, this region would rank 5th in the world in gross domestic product. One more hint, this is not a country. Let's also take 1 minute. I'll let you think about that for a minute. Do you know what I'm talking about? Well, this is Randy Kirk. If you haven't done it yet, please hit the like, hit subscribe, hit notify. Later today, we will have our Wednesday late program that'll be around 5 o'clock California time, where we will look into what Chairman Powell did to the market in the afternoon, because who knows what he might do later today when he gives his talk in about I think it's about an hour, maybe even sooner. Might be starting soon. Anyway, I should finish this up. Please also buy yourself a Cybertruck bottle opener and also join Patreon. Those would be two really good things to do. All right. So if you thought about my introduction there and you answered California, you would be right. So the states ranked by general gross domestic product, they're ranked this way. California, $3.5 trillion in gross domestic product. Texas comes in second, almost half, at 2.1 trillion. New York next at 1.9 trillion. Florida all the way down at 1.3 trillion, a third of California, and Illinois under $1 trillion at 973 billion. Now let's look at the countries. We got the USA at 25 trillion, China at 18 trillion, but with 4 times the population. We have Japan at 4.2 trillion, just 1/6 of the United States. Germany comes in at 4.2, almost exactly the same as Japan. California at 3.5 trillion is catching up to Germany and Japan. It's possible, as Japan and Germany shrink and California continues to grow, that it could be 3rd in the world instead of just 5th in the world. India is also catching up and could pass all 4 of those because it's growing faster. I'm sorry, all 3, California, Germany, and Japan. So India will probably pass California and may pass the other 2 soon. The UK, France, Russia, Canada, and Italy round out the top 10. All right. Well, what about California when it comes to cars? Well, they sold 1.7 million cars in 2022. Texas was close behind with 1.3, and then Florida with just over 1 million. So, but that would put California tied for 7th among countries. And all 3 of those states would be in the top 15 countries. Well, okay, then how are EV sales doing in these top countries and states? For the purposes of this exercise, I'm not going to try to figure out all the confusion between BEVs and hybrids and all the rest, because it would take so long to figure that out. It wasn't worth it for this particular article. In other situations, I really go to a lot of trouble, but not on this one. So the world overall has passed the 10% threshold and is now at about 14%. There are many who believe it will be up at close to 17% by the end of the year, which would be more than a 50% increase over last year. Of course, a lot of this has to do with its top auto market, China, which is now over 30% and growing very rapidly, and will end up probably between 30 and 50% this year. Regionally, Europe is next with about 21% over the entire continent, including a few standouts that are well above 50%. And then next is the United States with 7.7% average for the whole country, but expected probably to hit or get close to or past that 10% number in 2023. So California, though, is really leading edge with 25% of all vehicles have some electrification, and followed by other West Coast states like Oregon and Washington, and then Texas and Florida down there around the average, around 7.7%. Well, all right, so I happen to live in California, and maybe I live in kind of a good place to analyze this subject, because I no longer live, I lived for 50 years, I lived in West LA, where the Tesla count is crazy, over the top. It's really wild to see how many Teslas are driving around the streets of West LA. I live about 60 miles from the Santa Monica Pier in Riverside, California. Riverside is a much less expensive suburb. To give you an idea, a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home in Riverside would only be about $700,000. And if you compare that to about $1 million, if you're living within 10 miles of the beach. So about 30% less than 10 miles from the beach. Of course, if you're living within 2 miles or 3 miles of the beach, then you'd be talking about $1.5 million, $1.8 million, maybe over $2 million as you get closer and closer to the beach. So Riverside is also middle America in politics. Republicans can get elected to office here. And there are still billboards directing you to one of the 10 or so local mega churches that are in this area. So it's very unique compared to, say, going to the coast, where it's very unusual to even find a church anymore that has anybody attending it. All right, and there are Teslas everywhere here in Riverside too. Nobody seems to be worried that they aren't driving a unique car, even though I can go to the, get on my local little highway here in front of our subdivision, and I can see 4 Teslas before I get to the first stoplight. So lots and lots and lots of Teslas here. Nobody cares that they're not driving a unique car. And this is a part of the country where people are really all about their style and about being unique, but nobody seems to care, even in Hollywood, even in Culver City, the home of MGM or whatever it is called today. Sony Studios, I think it's still Sony. Has that changed again? I'm not sure. Anyway, but I will tell you that here in Riverside, in my Bible study, there are those who are not impressed by Tesla. They have a bit of that Midwest resentment thing going about, being forced down their throat. But I know plenty of conservative folks who are driving Teslas because they think it's a great car and a great financial decision. So depending on what you believe, or, EV sales in California, depending on who you believe, because I saw different stats, EV sales in California are up around 40% in 2023. So we could end up closer to, say, 30% or more by the end of the year, and they're continuing to accelerate. The next two largest markets in the world, Texas and Florida, around 8%. One might think that 2023 would see both of them passing the 10% threshold. For Texas, that would seem to be an almost a certainty. Florida states, getting the statistics on Florida was much harder, but I'm thinking they also have a very good chance to be up around 50% this year based on some of the statistics that I can find. So they could also be above 10%. So Californians are more likely to be first adopters. There's no doubt about that. Yes, they do have higher average incomes, although they spend way more for property and other things. So that affects that higher income, or in some ways creates the need for the higher income. Therefore, they were able to afford Teslas earlier because it was a more of the price category that they're used to paying. And yes, we do have much higher gas prices due to the massive California taxes, and that is probably causing adoption to happen faster in California too. But as you can see by looking at Texas and Florida, it's only a matter of time. The US is very likely to be around the 10% level by the end of the year, and we know that the 5 to 10% time is where you're getting into that beginning of the S curve. You've got Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, Colorado, Nevada, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Delaware have all passed 10% already. And Arizona, Virginia are very likely to join Texas and Florida, passing it in 2023. I think New York and a few others are also likely to go past the 10% level in 2023. Now, I know that I was just going to be talking about I was also going to talk about the positives and the negatives around Tesla today, but because of the Powell speech or the Fed announcement, etc., I really didn't have time to do both in this particular episode today. So I will put that off until tomorrow, unless there's breaking news that causes me to put it off till the next day. But I do want to talk about it because I can absolutely show where Tesla is worth $300 a share right now, but the macro is the holdup. Okay, that's a hint. All right, so tomorrow I'll show you how it's worth $300 a share. And if the macro starts to go, it won't matter if any fundamentals change on Tesla at all. The macro itself will drive Tesla back to 300. And then, of course, there's all the catalysts. All right. So if you haven't already done it, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit notify, please join Patreon, and please buy some Cybertrucks. And thank you for those who did buy a bunch of Cybertrucks this morning. Thank you very, very much. It's the bottle openers, as of course, is what I'm talking about. And yeah, I think that's all I've got right now. Okay, I'll talk to you later after the Powell speech. Be sure to tune in later to hear what happens with Powell.